If you hold a green card in the United States right now, stop whatever you're doing and listen very carefully. Because what you're about to hear could be the difference between keeping your permanent resident status and watching years, sometimes decades, of work and sacrifice unravel far faster than you ever thought possible. A major shift in how U.S. immigration authorities look at permanent residents is already underway. It's not splashed across the front page of every newspaper. It's not the headline at the top of every evening news broadcast. It's moving quietly through policy memos, digital systems, and internal procedures that rarely make it into public conversation. And here's the most dangerous part. Most green card holders have no idea this shift is happening. By the time many people realize what has changed, it won't be a warning anymore. It will be a letter in the mail, a problem at the airport, a denial of a citizenship application, or a notice saying their case has been flagged for review. At that point, people are fighting to undo a situation that could have been prevented years earlier with information they never received. I don't say that to scare you for no reason. This is not rumor. It's not speculation. It's not some theoretical scenario that might happen in a distant future. We are already seeing the effects in how cases are processed, how records are reviewed, and how closely permanent residents' lives are being cross-checked against multiple government databases. What makes this moment different from the typical immigration update you hear about is that this change doesn't announce itself with a loud, clear, single event. There isn't one big form you suddenly have to file, or one giant law that everyone can point to and say, that's it. Instead, it works quietly, continuously, and automatically in the background. It's about how your behavior and your records are interpreted day after day. Things that used to feel harmless, missing an address update, staying abroad a little too long, filing taxes late once or twice, were always technically issues, but in the past they often slipped under the radar. Now, those small gaps are turning into data points, and when enough of those data points pile up, they can trigger reviews, questions, and for some people, real threats to their status. Before you let that sink in as pure fear, pause for a second. This isn't about panic, it's about awareness. Panic gets you nowhere. Awareness gives you options. The reason this matters so much is that there has been a fundamental shift from a system that mostly assumed compliance unless it had a reason to doubt you, to a system that increasingly verifies compliance using the information it already has. For decades, once you received a green card, the government expected you to follow certain basic rules. Live primarily in the United States, keep your address current, file U.S. tax returns when required, and stay away from serious criminal trouble. But unless you did something that drew attention, applied for citizenship, applied for a new card after 10 years, took a very long trip abroad, those rules were rarely checked in a systematic way. That older system created a kind of quiet comfort. People assumed that if immigration wasn't contacting them, everything must be fine. If they'd held their card for many years without a problem, they believed that whatever they were doing must be acceptable. That assumption is much less safe now. Today, more and more information about your life as a permanent resident is being linked together electronically. Your entries and exits from the U.S., your address filings, your work authorization records, in some cases your tax records and certain types of law enforcement information. All of these pieces can be checked against each other. Instead of waiting 5 or 10 years to look back at your history, the system can build that picture gradually over time. The official explanation for this is that permanent residence is supposed to be just that. Permanent residence in the United States, not a convenience card you hold while living somewhere else most of the time. The government wants to make sure green cards are held by people who genuinely intend to make this country their long-term home. That idea has always been in the law. What has changed is the level of visibility and enforcement. Many green card holders believe that as long as they haven't committed a serious crime, they're safe. Others assume that if USCIS or DHS hasn't sent them a notice, there must not be any issues. Some people tell themselves, I'll apply for citizenship soon, so whatever I'm doing right now doesn't really matter. Under a more data-driven system, every one of those assumptions becomes risky. The system does not start with intent. It starts with information. It asks, does this person's documented life look like the life of a permanent resident in the U.S.? Do the addresses match? Do the tax filings line up? Does their travel pattern suggest that the US is their main home or just one of several places they spend time? Is their status clean, or are there unresolved issues sitting quietly in their file? If you're watching this on IANA Immigration Newsroom, you're already ahead of most people because you're getting informed before a crisis forces you to pay attention. The people who end up in the hardest situations are usually not the ones trying to cheat the system. They're the ones who simply didn't know the system around them had changed. My name is Mark. For years, I've been tracking and explaining immigration policy changes that affect green card holders and immigrant families across the United States. The goal here on Immigration Newsroom is to replace rumors and fear with clear explanations and practical steps. What we're talking about today is one of the most important shifts I've seen because it doesn't come with big, dramatic events. It comes with quiet updates to how your information is collected and interpreted. Let's walk through what this actually means in everyday life. In the past, permanent residence worked, in practice, like a largely passive status. You were told what the rules were, but unless you did something big, like apply for naturalization or stay outside the US for more than a year, nobody was really checking whether you followed them step by step. Say you moved apartments and never filed the address change form? Nothing happened. Say you spent 7 months abroad visiting family but managed to get back in with a friendly officer at the airport. Nothing happened. Say you filed your U.S. tax returns a year late once or twice. Again, for most people, nothing happened. Those events still created legal risks, but those risks often stayed in the background until some future date, if they came up at all. Now imagine those same events taking place in a world where various government systems cross-check each other routinely. Your I-94 and airline records show your entries and exits. A separate database shows that you filed an address change with the post office but not with immigration. Tax records show your filing dates and income. Individually, each of these things can be explained. Together, they begin to form a pattern, and patterns are exactly what modern systems are built to spot. Let's make this more concrete. Picture two permanent residents. The first one, we'll call her Anna, has had her green card for 8 years. She lives in the same city, works for the same employer, files her taxes every year on time, updates her address with USCIS when she moves, and only travels abroad for short visits, 2 or 3 weeks at a time, maybe once a year. On paper, Anna looks exactly like the kind of person permanent residence was designed for. Her life is clearly rooted in the United States. Under older and newer systems alike, she's unlikely to raise any eyebrows. Now, picture someone else. Let's say his name is David. He also has a green card. He travels often, sometimes staying abroad 4 or 5 months at a time because his parents are elderly and he wants to help them. He moved to a different apartment 8 months ago but never filed a change of address with USCIS because he thought updating his driver's license was enough. He filed 1 year of taxes late when his business was struggling. He changed jobs twice and did some freelance work in between, but never really thought about how that would appear on paper. Under the old system, the government might only see all of that when David applied for citizenship or got stopped at the border after a long trip. Under a more integrated system, those data points can align much sooner. Long absences, multiple foreign entries and exits, an old address still listed, delayed tax filings, inconsistent employment information. None of that automatically means David loses his green card, but it can lead an officer to ask, is this person really living in the U.S. as a permanent resident, or are they slowly shifting their life somewhere else? Once that question is attached to your file, it follows you. The shift we're talking about is essentially this. Permanent residents used to be checked in big snapshots years apart. Now it's being built up like a time-lapse photo, frame by frame, through ongoing records. That's why the green card itself, the physical card in your wallet, is no longer the whole story. Another piece of this puzzle is the steady move toward online accounts and digital portals. You've probably already noticed that USCIS wants people to file many forms online, check case status online, and receive notices electronically. It's very likely that, over time, more of your responsibilities as a permanent resident will be managed through official online profiles. Think of that profile as your living immigration record. It's not just what you told the government when you first applied for a green card, it's what your life looks like now, as reported and as cross-checked. When your real life changes, but your official record doesn't change with it, that gap is what creates risk. That means simple things now have immigration weight. Moving is no longer just a matter of telling your friends your new address. You're expected to update your address with immigration as well. Changing jobs is no longer just a deal between you and your employer. It shows up in tax records and sometimes in immigration systems. Long travel isn't just a plane ticket, it becomes part of your residency story. None of this is meant to say you can't move, change jobs, or travel. Life happens. People get married, divorced, laid off, promoted. They care for sick relatives abroad. But under a more verification-heavy system, how you document those changes matters almost as much as the changes themselves. So what can you do about it? The first and most important thing is to accept that your green card is not a set it and forget it document. It's more like a long-term contract with ongoing conditions. You agree to live primarily in the U.S., to follow U.S. laws, and to keep certain information up to date. If you treat it that way, you're already ahead of many people. Start with your paperwork. Do you have copies of your last several years of U.S. tax returns? Do you have proof of where you've lived? Leases, mortgage statements, utility bills? Do you know roughly how many days you spent outside the U.S. each year in the last 5 years? If you don't, now is the time to organize that. Not when you're sitting in a waiting room for a citizenship interview. If you've taken long trips abroad, anything close to or over 6 months at a time, write down the dates now while you still remember them, and keep those records together with your travel tickets. Long absences have always been a risk for green card holders, but now that border entries and exits are recorded electronically, officers have exact numbers. It's much better if you do too. For address changes, make it a habit. Whenever you move, updating USCIS should be on the same checklist as setting up utilities and changing your mailing address. The legal requirement to report an address change within a set period has existed for years, but enforcement was historically weak. Today, failing to report can look less like an innocent oversight and more like a pattern of ignoring obligations. For employment, you don't have to report every minor change in many cases, but your overall story, how you support yourself, should make sense if someone looked at your file and your tax returns side by side. If you've had periods of no income, ask yourself how you would explain those if an officer asked. If you did freelance or gig work, keep basic records of what you did and when. What if, listening to this, you realize you've already made mistakes? Maybe you have very long trips in your past, or you haven't filed taxes correctly, or you never updated your address for a move that happened years ago? That doesn't mean you're automatically doomed. It does mean you should act thoughtfully instead of waiting and hoping it never comes up. In those situations, talking to a qualified immigration lawyer is worth it. A lawyer can help you assess how serious the issues are under current law, what you can do to fix or mitigate them, and whether it's wise to travel or to apply for citizenship now, or wait until you've rebuilt a cleaner recent history. Sometimes the right strategy is to wait a few years with perfect compliance before filing for naturalization, so that older problems are weighed against newer good behavior. Other times, the right move is to fix paperwork, like filing missed tax returns, before you put yourself in front of an officer. Another thing you may be wondering is whether keeping up with all this compliance only helps the government enforce against you, or whether it can actually help you. The answer is that doing things right can absolutely work in your favor. Imagine two citizenship applicants sitting in front of an officer. Both have held a green card for 7 years. One has made no effort to keep organized records. They're trying to remember travel dates from memory. They can't easily show where they lived each year, and they have no idea when they filed their taxes. The other walks in with a folder or a digital file where each year's key documents are in order: addresses, tax transcripts, travel itineraries. From the officer's perspective, which case is easier and more reassuring? The one where the story lines up with documents already in the system. When you keep your record clean and up to date, you lower the chances of surprises and you make it easier for immigration to see you as exactly what you are: a stable, law-abiding permanent resident. Now, I want to talk briefly about misinformation because whenever there's a shift like this, extreme claims start circulating. Some people online will say, the government is creating a system to take away millions of green cards for no reason. Others will say, this is all fake news, nothing has really changed. Neither extreme is helpful. The reality is that permanent residence has always had conditions. The government is getting better tools to see whether those conditions are being met in real time. If you follow the rules and keep your record accurate, you're exactly the person the law is supposed to protect. But if you ignore the shift, you may find your past catching up with you in ways that feel sudden and unfair. Here on Allied Immigration Newsroom. The goal is not to scare you into paralysis. It's to give you enough detail that you can act with confidence. That means understanding both the risks and the opportunities in a more connected immigration system. So, to bring this together into concrete steps you can take after this video ends, here's what I recommend. First, locate your green card and make sure it's valid. Check the expiration date. If it's expiring within the next year, start looking into renewal now rather than waiting. Remember, renewing the card doesn't renew the status, but an expired card can cause serious headaches with employers, travel, and ID checks. Second, take an hour and gather key documents from the last few years, your tax returns or IRS transcripts, proof of where you've lived, and any travel records you can find. You don't have to create a perfect archive in one day, but start a folder, physical or digital, that you can add to over time. Third, make a small list of any potential issues you already know about. Long trips abroad, late tax filings, times you forgot to file an address change, any arrests or serious run-ins with the law, even if charges were dropped. Don't panic about them, but be honest with yourself. That list is what you would eventually want to discuss with an immigration lawyer, not something to hide from yourself. Fourth, pay attention to official announcements from USCIS and DHS about new online accounts, portals, or registration requirements specifically aimed at permanent residents. When those tools are announced, don't ignore them because they look technical or boring. Those are the tools that can either document your compliance or highlight your absence. Fifth, stay informed. Immigration law and policy are not static, they change. Subscribing to Immigration Newsroom and similar reputable sources gives you a way to adapt before those changes become personal crises. If this extended explanation helped you see your situation differently or gave you a clearer sense of what you should do next, take a moment to like this video so more green card holders can find it. Make sure you're subscribed to Keep Immigration Newsroom with notifications turned on so you're not the last to find out when new developments affect permanent residents. And if you have specific questions about travel, tax issues, long absences, or anything else related to maintaining your green card, leave them in the comments. I can't give individual legal advice here, but your questions help me decide what to explain in future videos so that this channel stays as useful and practical as possible. Most people don't lose immigration benefits because they woke up one day and decided to ignore the law. They lose them because the system around them changed and they didn't realize it until the consequences arrived. You've already taken the most important step by paying attention. Now it's about turning that awareness into action. Stay informed, stay organized, stay compliant, and don't let silence or delay make decisions for you. This is Immigration Newsroom. Hi, boy, and I'll see you in the next update. I'll see.